Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Dhamadhava Gopijana Balabha Girivara Dhadi Gopijana Balabha Girivara Dhadi Gopijana Balabha Girivara Dhadi Girivara Dhadi Jasodanandana Brajajanarandana Jasodanandana Brajajanarandana Brajajanarandana Jamanatira Vanam Chadi Jamanatira Vanam Chadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Balabha Girivara Dhadi Girivara Dhadi Gopijana Balabha Girivara Dhadi Jasodanandana Brajajanarandana Jasodanandana Brajajanarandana Jamunatira Vanam Chadi Jamunatira Vanam Chadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayom Vishnu Padparamahansa Parivijagacharya Astatara Satasi Simaris Vanges Iti Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Gaur Pimanandi. Because this is the Sunday program for both the Chicago and the Naperville temples, I'm not going to do what I normally have been doing, which is just interact with the children a whole bunch and get them involved and excited and alert, and I'm not going to do that tonight. Sorry, kids. because it's a different setting. This is, the Sunday Feast program, for a Sunday program. So the facilitator for the Chicago Temple Sunday program is Yashodanandana. And normally he would be here making his announcements and so forth, but that's being skipped too. And instead it's just being live streamed on Facebook, and so no introductions. But he has been attempting to make a theme for the last 2 years, or every Sunday program, there's some continuity of a theme. And so far, of late, it's one of the chapters of Canto 1 Srimad Bhagavatam. And I think I'm guessing, that one of his reasons of doing that is to encourage all of our listeners, as well as those in this room and not in the room, to dive into Srimad Bhagavatam and read it carefully and discuss it in your reading groups and however you all are involved with Srimad Bhagavatam. Just simply having Srimad Bhagavatam in your home, like this evening, there's a new set of Srimad Bhagavatam being received. Just have it in your home, and it brings auspiciousness. There's further things you can do besides put it in your home. You can open it. And aside from opening it, you can hold it in your hand and you can start to read it. And then, more than that, you can read it and discuss it with others, and so forth. And if you take that journey with Srimad Bhagavatam on a regular basis, Shrinvata Sakata Krsna Punya Shravana Kirtana Ridyantaksto Yavadrani Vidhunoti Saritsatam Nastaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistuki. And all nice things like that will happen. The process of bhakti will begin, knowledge and some detachment from all the temporary things that are filling the mind and the heart. They'll become less significant, and the eternal becomes more significant. And Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya, Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya, by regularly, Nityam literally means always, but Nityam can also mean regularly. Engage in this Bhagavat Seva, that is, hearing the message of the Bhagavata and engaging in service to the person Bhagavata, those who speak and live by the message of the Bhagavatam. Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati. Bhaktir Bhavati. Bhakti awakens. So we're now in chapter 19 of Canto 1, which is the final chapter. We commonly hear that the speaker of Srimad Bhagavatam is Shukadeva Goswami, but he hasn't even appeared yet. In the whole first canto, he makes his appearance at the end of chapter 19, and then he starts speaking in canto 2. So we're going to be introduced to him this evening, and the introduction to Shukadeva Goswami comes from the person who heard Srimad Bhagavatam from him, and the person who heard was Maharaj Parikshit. Maharaj Parikshit was the grandson of the Pandavas. Well, specifically the grandson of Arjuna, one of the Pandavas. Because during the Kurukshetra battle, the descendants of the king, Yudhishthira, were all killed. The 5 sleeping sons of their wife, Draupadi, she had 5 sons, but they were mercilessly killed, literally, in the middle of the night by Ashvatthama. So we heard about that in the earlier parts of Canto 1, Chapter 7. And so the posthumous child, meaning Uttara, was the mother of Maharaj Parikshit. And Uttara was the son, Uttara's husband was the son of Arjuna and Subhadra. Arjuna and Subhadra's son's name was? Abhimanyu. Abhimanyu and his wife Uttara were the father and mother of Maharaj Parikshit. So he was the only surviving member of the royal family. He was the only surviving member of the royal family, Maharaj Parikshit. So when Yudhishthira accepted the rule of the throne, and how long did he remain as king until prior to Krishna's leaving this world, when also the Pandavas left this world? How many years was it? Do you recall?
14 years.
Huh?
14 years.
No, 34 years. 34 years. 34 years. 34 years. 14 was how long Ram was in the forest. 34 years was the duration of Yudhishthira's rule. And then Krishna departed, and the Pandavas departed, but before departing, they placed Maharaj Parikshit on the throne as the successor king. So the grandson, but he became the successor king. And Maharaj Parikshit was, he was a celebrity even before he was born. How old are you?
7.
7. Are you a celebrity yet?
No.
Look at his dad and find out. Well, Maharaj Parikshit, even before he was born, he was a celebrity. And here's why. During the concluding portion of the Kurukshetra battle, Ashvatthama tried to kill the one remaining member of the royal family, descendant of the royal family, by sending a Brahmastra to kill the child in the womb of Uttara, which was Maharaj Parikshit. It's in this canto, first canto. But so Uttara saw the Brahmastra coming, and the understanding that's repeatedly explained is the Brahmastra is such a weapon that nothing can check it. Nothing can check it. It's a heat weapon, but nothing can stop it. It's like an atomic bomb. Once released, that's it. Except for one thing, the personality of Godhead. So Krishna manifested himself before Maharaj Parikshit for 2 reasons. One, stop the Brahmastra. And the other is even while within the womb of his mother, he saw the Supreme Lord. And that's the reason why he was given Parikshit as a name. Parikshit means examiner. So when he was born, he was always looking, where is he? Where is Krishna? Where is Krishna? Is he here? Is he there? And then as his childhood grew and he became the king, his fame continued. He was a great king. So many things happened But the section just before chapter 19 is chapter 18. And in chapter 18, the misfortune occurred where one day he was in the forest, and suddenly he who has complete control of his senses became overwhelmingly thirsty, which isn't his nature because he can control his senses. And so he went to the hermitage of a sage. And when he went to the hermitage of the sage was in meditation. And he didn't even understand, because of his absorption in meditation, that anybody had come, what to speak of the king. So a second uncharacteristic thing happened. Parikshit became angry. He doesn't become angry, but he became angry. And he said, what kind of sage are you? Don't even know how to honor a guest, what to speak of the king. You can't even speak anything. You can't offer me water. You can't offer me a place to sit. He insulted him in words. And then as he was leaving his little cottage, he saw a dead snake on the ground. So he picked up the dead snake on the edge of his sword, came back into the cottage, put it around the neck of the sage as a garland. This is a fitting garland for you. And left. And we hear at the end of chapter 18, after he left, the son of the sage name was Shamak Rishi, and the little boy's name was Shringi. So Shringi saw his father with a garland of a snake, and he was horrified. And he heard from others what had happened. And so he misused his Brahminical power. He knew mantras, and he recited a mantra that resulted in a curse to kill the king. The king would die, according to this curse, by a mystical being, a bird that would fly. A snake that would fly. Birds fly, and snakes crawl. Snakes don't fly, and birds don't crawl. But so it was a mystical thing, created by mystic power, by the power of mantra. And so the snake bird, after 7 days, with such poison, the body of Maharishi Parikshit would instantly die, burst into flames, so much poison, and die. And then the sage came out of trance. He heard from others what his son had done. And he felt, oh, horrible. I mean, what the king did was not right, but what the king did is not punishable by death. But it's too late. My son has already uttered this curse. So he decided he had better let the king know. But he didn't want to go and tell the king because he was too embarrassed. And the king would have felt horrible receiving this message. So a messenger went to inform the king, guess what? You're going to die in 7 days. So you should prepare yourself. So that's where chapter 18 ends. And chapter 19 begins. Maharishi Parikshit was already feeling horrified. You know, one of those uh-oh feelings. He knew he had done something very wrong. He had offended a Brahmin. And he knew from the offense to a Brahmin, he was going to get a big reaction. Now there's a very important teaching, which those of you that are beginning to read Bhagavad Gita, you're probably familiar with. It's mentioned twice in Bhagavad Gita, a very celebrated verse spoken by Lord Brahma in Canto 10, Chapter 14, in relation to the Brahma Vimohan Leela, when Brahma stole the calves and cowherd boys and put them in a cave. he came back to see what Krsna would do, and he saw the cowherd boys and the calves. And he was puzzled. Anyway, that pastime. When he went back to the cave, they're in the cave. Then he went back to where they were sitting, and there they were sitting. And then Krsna manifested this amazing mystic scene of unlimited Narayan forms for each one of the calves and cowherd boys, and so forth and so on. And then they all poof, they just disappeared. So then he offered prayers. So his prayers are found in Canto 10, Chapter 14. And one of the celebrated prayers is right on the topic here. Tate nukampam susamikshamano. It's a verse that he says he made a mistake, and he was feeling, I made a mistake. And then he was, just like the question, I don't know your name, but you asked a question last time we were together. What happens if you do an all day long of nice devotional service, and then at the end of the day something unfortunate happens? Wasn't you that asked that question? Your daughter. Okay, excuse me. So, Brahma had one of those. Some misfortune was coming, and he knew it. So what do you do when you're trying to be serve nicely and be polite and all nice things, and then you make a mistake, or maybe you don't even know what the mistake was that you made sometime in the past, but here comes the reaction for that mistake. How do you respond to that? What do you do? What are the steps that you should take? So Brahma's teaching, same thing that Maharaj Parikshit is doing. He's not making any attempt to neutralize the reaction. He's fully accepting accountability for the wrong. He's accepting there is going to be a reaction, and I will accept the reaction, whatever it is. But one thing, I will not let my mind budge 1 inch, or fraction of an inch, from the lotus feet of the personality of Godhead. Whatever come what may. And by keeping my mind fixed like that, one thing is certain. I will attain the kingdom of God. So that's what Maharaj Parikshit did. He was taking it actually in a very humble way, because that's one of the characteristics of one who is surrendered. In a very humble way, he was thinking to himself, because I'm an attached householder, Krsna has been very kind. He's making an arrangement so that I can get really detached really fast. By circumstance, I'm forced to, because I don't have any choice. And because I don't have any choice, I'll get really detached, and then I can fix my mind better on the personality of Godhead. But his mind was already fixed. He's just speaking in that humble way. So we're not so humble, and we're not fixed either. But it's a lesson to learn. In life, there are misfortunes that come. Some of them may be expected, most of them are unexpected. And when the unexpected misfortune comes, it's a nice lesson. First, don't react. 2, go to a nice reflective space, mode of goodness space. 3, fix your mind on the personality of Godhead. And then consider from that place what's best for service to the personality of Godhead in this circumstance. So he was accepting responsibility for his wrong. He didn't know what it was going to be, but he knew something would come. And when the messenger came to him to inform him that he was going to die in 7 days, he felt this is justice. Now, the Brahmin father didn't think that. He did something wrong, but it's not a death penalty for what he did. So it's not commensurate with the wrong. But it's too late, my son misused his power. and it can't be retracted. So, what did Maharaj Parikshit do next? The acceptance is going to happen. So then he decided, I have 7 days. I'm going to undergo some austerity. In his case, he was going to fast until death. And he gave up his royal throne and his crown and royal attire. He turned the kingdom over to his son. What's the name of his son? Starts with a J. Janamejaya, right. Very good. Janamejaya became the next king, and Maharaj Parikshit went to the bank of the holy Ganges, and he spoke some nice things about the holy Ganges. Actually, Sutta, who's describing all this. I'm going to start reading a few verses now, instead of just telling the story. Yeah, many sages came. According to the Bhagavatam, they came from all over the universe, not just the Earth planet, because he was a celebrated personality, and they wanted to be present to create auspiciousness for the soul's departure. And so they came, and not only learned persons and rishis and so forth, but kings and other celebrated demigods. There's a long list of who came to be present. And then he spoke. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, the controller of both the transcendental and mundane worlds, has graciously overtaken me in the form of a Brahman's curse. Due to my being too much attached to family life, the Lord, in order to save me, has appeared before me in such a way that only out of fear I will detach myself from the world. O Brahmanas, just accept me as a completely surrendered soul. And let Mother Ganges, the representative of the Lord, also accept me in that way. For I have already taken the lotus feet of the Lord into my heart. Let the snake bird or whatever magical thing the Brahmana created bite me at once. Well, he's going to have to wait for 7 days because he has to hear Srimad Bhagavatam. And that was the duration of the curse. I only desire that you all continue singing the deeds of Lord Vishnu. And then just one more verse for this evening. Again, offering obeisances unto all you Brahmanas, I pray. So he's going to ask for 3 benedictions. We'll do one at a time. I pray that if I should again take my birth in the material world, he's not asking for liberation. He gets liberation, but he's not asking for liberation. His aspiration, his asha, his desire is, may I have complete attachment to the unlimited Lord Krishna. Now, growing up as a young boy and a young man, and even as a king, he was very conscious of the fact that his father and his grandparents, the Pandavas, were very, very dear to Lord Krishna. So he was accustomed to hearing topics about Krishna because he was hearing topics about his grandparents. And they were also celebrated in the universe, not just in this world. He was very keenly aware of the nobility and pure devotion of his ancestry. So by hearing topics about Krishna, as he had done again and again and again, he became very purified, naturally, very purified in devotion to the Supreme Person. And so he wants to hear from the Brahmanas, to continue to hear the topics about the Lord, but he wants complete attachment if I must take birth again? Attachment to the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So maybe that's sufficient. But he asks for something else also. He asks for the benediction for association of devotees of the Lord. And why does one want association of devotees of the Lord? We also want. But there's a reason why. Because devotees of the Lord are engaged in activities that remind us of Krishna. Who is a little definition? Each of us have an idea in our lives who we might consider to be our best friend or friends. And there are different reasons why we have friendship of this person, that person, the other person. But a spiritual conception of your best friend, or being somebody else's best friend, whether it's husband and wife, or friend and friend, or whatever, is somebody who reminds you of Krishna. That's your best friend. Because repeated birth and death take place because of forgetfulness. In this material world, it's a place of forgetfulness. It's a place of illusion, where something appears to be real but's not. And what is appears to be not real. Although religious people have some idea of God, the idea of God as a supreme person is quite vague. There's some idea of a higher being of some kind, but what that higher being of some kind is quite vague. So just like this set of Srimad Bhagavatams on the table here, now you obviously have some background, because already you knew Janamejaya was the son of Maharaj Parikshit, the next king. So maybe from Mahabharata, yes? But the topics of Krishna are unlimited. And that's really something. What's unlimited? Everything we know has some limit. But the topics of Krishna, the potencies of Krishna, I'll just share one little. The potencies of Krishna are unlimited. I heard this from a very nice speaker, something that I wasn't aware of. This first to tell a little Prabhupada story. We'll come back to this in just a moment. Pause button, we're going over here to a Prabhupada story. Once Prabhupada was asked in a public assembly a trick question. The trick question was, Swamiji, can God create something so heavy he cannot lift it? And the trick question is, if he can create something that he cannot lift, there's something he cannot do, and therefore he's not God. Or, if he cannot create something that's so heavy he cannot lift it, there's something he cannot do, so he's not God. It's a trick question. And Prabhupada's immediate answer, I wasn't there, but I heard from somebody who was there. No pause. Yes, God can create something so heavy, he cannot lift it. And then lift it. It turns out that question, I heard this from a very wonderful speaker. In Europe, it was called the stone paradox. It was a philosopher's challenge to theists, to say, if God is all-powerful, then here's a paradox that shows he's not. because you say yes or you say no, but he can do both because he's all powerful. There's no limit, and therefore he can create a stone or some object so heavy he can't lift it, then he can lift it. No problem. And so that's a display, a symptom of, by nature, Bhagavan has all bhagas or opulences in full. That's the meaning of Bhagavan, one who possesses all bhagas, Bhagavan. And their bhagas are unlimited, but 6 principal ones, and Bhagavan has all of them. And the devotees of the Lord, the benefit of the association of the devotees of the Lord is they like, from Bhagavad Gita, Katayantas shamam nityam tushanti cha ramanti cha. They like tushanti, they find great satisfaction. Ramanti, great happiness. Just describing topics of Krishna, describing, and what's the limit? There's no limit. Because his potencies, his opulences, his pastimes, his beauty, his quality, it's unlimited. Just this morning we were discussing from Canto 10, Chapter 38, text number 14 from the Bhagavatam. This is Akura going from Mathura to Vrindavan to bring Krishna to Mathura so he can kill Kamsa. So there's 4 verses in a row. The conclusion of it is, he's so attractive that Maha Vishnu wants to see him. He's so attractive that his beauty is astonishing to Narayan and Vaikuntha. Mahavishnu wants to see him. It is described in, this is coming attractions when you start reading the Bhagavatam. The last chapter of Canto 10 is Krishna and Arjun visit Mahavishnu. It's really an interesting chapter. We'll come back to chapter 19 over here just a moment. In Dwaraka, there was one Brahmin who very mysteriously, just after his wife gave birth to a son, there wasn't like, stillbirth, it was the child was born and alive, and then the child just disappeared. The child didn't die. The child just disappeared. And one son after the next son, it just disappeared. So he started criticizing Ugrasena. What kind of king are you? And Krishna has all these glories. He can't even protect a Brahmana to have his sons just disappear. One of those. So Arjuna visited Dwaraka after several of these events happened, and he heard the criticism of Ugrasena and Krishna. So he's a Kshatriya. He immediately went to the Brahmin and said, "My dear Brahmin, with all respect, I will protect you. I don't know why it happened, what happened, but my archery skill is such that guaranteed you can have your next son and no one can touch him. I'll assure it. If I fail, then I'll give up my life." He took a vow. So sure enough, when it was time for the child to be born, Arjun with his arrows made a structure surrounding the Brahmin's home that was impenetrable with arrows. The child was born, and shortly thereafter just disappeared. The Brahmana went, "Arjuna." So Arjuna searching for the child and searching here and searching there and couldn't find the child. So he decided, I have to give up my life. I made a vow. So he's making arrangements for a big fire, and Krishna stops him and says, wait, what are you doing? I took a vow. He said, well, I know where the child is. Let's go. You know the story? Okay, so Krishna had a really special chariot. Krishna's special chariot was also used by Arjuna when it came to the kidnapping of Subhadra. That's another story. So Krishna and Arjuna, Krishna just called his chariot and zoom, the chariot showed up. And off they went. And so they're going to go where Krishna wants to go. It describes in chapter 89 the vision that they saw of the upper planetary system. So this is the Earth planet. Bhu, Bhuvarloka, Svargaloka, Maharloka, Janaloka, Tapaloka, Brahmaloka, and they kept going through the shells or coverings of the universe and described what that was like. And then they went on the other side of the universe, what that is like. And they kept going, and they came to this place that's the abode of Mahavishnu. It's called Mahakalapur. That's the name of his capital city. It describes the opulence, this and that, the brilliance, the light, this and that. And they come before Mahavishnu. And, he said, I'm so happy to see you. Yes, it was me that stole, that kidnapped the boys, the children of this Brahmana, because I knew you would come. And I wanted to see you. I can't descend and to see you, but I needed you to come, so I did it. Yeah, here they are. Here are the boys. Take them back to the Brahmana. And when your pastimes are completed of annihilating all the demons on earth, please come see me again. Because the form of Krishna is all attractive, even to Mahavishnu, even to Maha Narayana. These verses in the Bhagavatam are describing. So, describing the beauty of Krishna, the qualities of Krishna, the pastimes of Krishna. This is what Katayan Taschamam Nityam Tushyanticha Ramanticha, what devotees like to do. And when you do like that in the association of others, you're their best friend. And your best friend is one who reminds you of Krishna. Supposing you're going through some difficult time. Maybe your best friend has put their arm around you. Maybe they help you out in getting on the other side of the difficulty. That's nice too. But the best service a friend can do is make sure that you don't forget Krishna. Whatever you do. Whatever you do. Always remember Krishna. Never forget Krishna. That's the principle that's behind all teachings of higher elevation to higher consciousness. Satatam Vishnu Vishmartavya Najata Chit. Always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna. Sarva Vidhi Niseda Shur, Etayor Eva Kinkara. All the vidhis are pursuant of that one thing. So to be a best friend, remind your friends of Krishna. I mean, you don't have to be obsessive or something. Just by your nature, by your character, remind them of Krishna. Just today we were going to a program in Milwaukee, like this little gathering, and the driver didn't have his GPS set straight, so he pulled off to a place where he could just fiddle with his GPS and get it straight. So there was somebody, a worker, with a hammer in one hand and a saw in the other hand, that saw us, and he came walking over. He said, "Are you lost? Do you need any help?" And he said, "No, he's just putting in the correct address in his GPS." And then he looked at me and he said, "Are you a monk?" And so, I didn't say, "It's not Halloween." I didn't say that. I said, not just a monk, but a Hare Krishna monk. And he went, oh. And then he said, Hare Krishna. He said, I'm Muslim. So, but just by dressing this way, or sometimes devotees, even in public, will wear tilak, and by seeing tilak, it reminds you, but it also reminds other people of Krishna. Whatever you can do, you don't have to be a fanatic or something, but by your very character, by your very nature, if you can remind others of Krishna, you're being their best friend. And your best friends are those who, the way they are, their character, their nature, their behavior, their speech, everything is to remind you of Krishna. And this Srimad Bhagavatam is one very wonderful way to remind you of Krishna. So I'm really happy to be part of a little gathering where you're going to be officially receiving Srimad Bhagavatam, and be the best friend of your son by hearing stories of Srimad Bhagavatam together. So that just like you learned Mahabharata somehow, probably somebody recited it and you heard it and it's still in you. So give him the same opportunity. And, the other children that your son gets with, because children have friends, and if their friends are of good character, that'll help your son grow to be of good character. So children's activities that are centered on topics of Krishna, somehow. So one more request. This is now Maharaj Pariksit making a request of all the assembled sages from all over the universe and brahmanas and so forth. He has 3 benedictions he's requesting. If I must take birth again in the material world, may I remain attached to the service of the Lord Sri Krishna. May I have association of devotees of the Lord, because they'll remind me of Krishna. So what's the third thing? It's really nice. And I want the benediction of having friendly relations with all living beings. Because there are lots of living beings that aren't devotees of the Lord, at least, consciously living a life of devotion to the Lord. Let me have a friendly attitude towards them. Now sometimes people are mean. Like this Muslim man that walked up to us. His first thought was, do you need help? Are you lost? Any way that I can be of help to you? We were nobody. And he is busy doing carpentry work. But still, he just wanted to be of some service to an unknown person. Can I be of some help to you? That was his disposition. And then when he saw a Hare Krishna monk, it was like, wow, Hare Krishna monk. I mean, that was his face lit up. Now, not everyone's face is going to light up when they say, oh, you're a Hare Krishna monk. They may say something else. But let us have that regard for others, whether they're a nice Muslim man or the other kind of personality in this world. Now, what does having a friendly disposition towards all living beings mean? Now, one of the things that's required to have a friendly disposition towards all living beings is to see a difference between the covering and the soul. There's a difference between the covering and the soul. Just a little sharing, just looking at the clock, brief sharing. Something that I struggled with when I turned 13. Being a teenager is tough. So one of the things that I struggled with was the teaching that you'll find, that I found in Christian teaching, is having a friendly attitude towards other living beings. It's one of the essential teachings that Christ gave. Love God and love thy neighbor. So I had a big problem with loving my neighbor when I saw people do bad stuff. And I don't feel love for those people that do bad stuff. You know, man's inhumanity to man. That was the phrase that I was, you know, teenagers. It's tough. And I saw it, and it was like, I can't follow that instruction because I don't love those people. And I didn't get an answer. I struggled with it. I went to my elder brother. He didn't have an answer. He sent me to the priest. The priest didn't have an answer. The priest says maybe he needs a psychiatrist. So what kind of priest are you? So when I became a devotee, it's there in the biblical teaching. I just didn't capture it, nor did someone have the capacity to remind me of what the teaching is, help me understand it. And the understanding is to see the soul within. And the soul is not the same as the covering of the soul. So don't identify the person, the other living entities, as the covering. Because there are nice coverings and there's some not nice coverings. There's good and there's bad. There's kind and there's evil in this world. There's the modes of nature in this world. And the modes of nature influence minds and bodies to do good things, bad things, depending upon the modes and the movements of time. But that's not, the soul is timeless. The soul is the real person. How to have a friendly disposition, a friendly regard for all living entities, requires understanding of those living entities. Even, I won't name some names of people that I think are just bullies in this world, but they have a relationship with the source of everything also. So I may want to keep a distance from a bully, but I'm not going to get bent out of shape and angry and want to do stuff to get back at that person. I may do something that's of benefit for that person that does hurtful things to others, without going into details and examples. The friendly disposition towards other living beings is see them as soul. And certainly the innocent entities, like animals, or trees, or whatever are the other forms of life, they have a right to live. And we don't take their life for our convenience, our sense gratification. We don't do that. We respect the life that's within and their entitlement to live their life within, you know, as long as they're not harming. We were just discussing, coming home from yesterday's evening's program, Vibhu Chaitanya drove through that park that's right behind the house. And I was asking, you know, what was that before? And I was told it was a forest preserve, and later Madhava said it wasn't really a forest preserve, it was just a place where there's a lot of trees. And then I felt something when you said they recently cut down another big tree. You know, for a person who's respecting life of others, you don't just go cut down trees. You don't. It's my soft-heartedness, but before they built that thing that they put there, it's like a sports complex or an exercise gymnasium type of thing, place, and lots of parking. There was a house, and a man lived in the house. All of a sudden, the house just moved. There was no foundation. It was just a house on that land. And there was a big tree, and underneath the big tree was a red fox. Now, I'm not like a connoisseur of animals, but it was really clear it was a fox. He had a big, bushy red tail that kind of, when he moved, it would kind of flowed behind him, and it was very majestic. And then when they cut everything down, where'd that fox go? Poor guy. Who cares about a fox? We're going to build a exercise place for human beings. Anyway, no thought of how our lives are impacting other life forms, just our enjoyment. That's it. It's not a principle to live by. It's not a principle of higher consciousness to live by. So Maharaj Parikshit was asking for those 3 benedictions. And they're very, if I had, I got a little distracted. There's another place in the Bhagavatam. I invite you to read it. It's when Krishna's entering Mathura, one of the places he goes is to the home of the florist who makes garlands. His name is Sudama. Sudama the florist. Chapter 51, I think. So he goes to the home of the florist. It's a long story, but we don't have time for a long story. He was attracted to Krishna. A little bit of the story. Florists, they need flowers. So he knew where he can go to gather nice flowers. And he heard there's really nice flowers in Vrindavan, and it's not so far from Mathura. So on occasion he would go to Vrindavan to gather flowers. And one time he saw Krishna in Vrindavan. Whoa! He just became stunned. Krishna and Balaram with the cowherd boys and the cows. And so he regularly went to Vrindavan, but he just saw Krishna from a distance. And so he became a Krishna Bhakta, just from that occupation of looking for flowers. So then it's a nice story. When Krishna came to Mathura, he went to visit the florist. Because Krishna is omniscient, he knew he was his devotee. So when Krishna came right to his house, the florist was overwhelmed. My life is now made perfect. My family, my home, my children, my austerities, my everything is now, everything is perfect. And he didn't even have to ask Krishna what he wanted. There's some versions that say, Krishna saw the florist had 2 special garlands made for Krishna, because he heard that he had come to Mathura, hanging on the wall. Krishna just looked at them, and he understood Krishna wants them. So he immediately brought them, garlanded Krishna and Balaram, and Krishna said, you please me so much by your it's not the garland, it's his devotion. It's not what you give to Krishna, it's the love with which you do whatever you do, as Krishna is attracted. So he asked him, please accept a benediction from me, anything you like. Blank check, fill in the numbers. And he said the same 3 things, slightly different, but same 3 things. So those are 3 things. There's a good. We're way down here. We're not about to see Krishna going to Kamsa's chariot. We're not a florist in Mathura where Krishna comes. We're not Maharaj Parikshit. But it gives us a direction to move in as we go on the bhakti path. These are some very valuable aspirations, sankalpas, intentions in fulfilling our lives, and stay with it. Become attached to the lotus feet of Krishna, which means serving him. Be always hankering for the association of his devotees, because they'll remind us of Krishna. And maintain a friendly attitude towards all living entities. At least the spirit-soul aspect. Of course, there is a package. You don't have to love all packages, but have a friendly attitude towards all souls, because they're parts of the Supreme Soul. So that's a lesson from Canto 1, Chapter 19. And I guess the next chapter that's going to come up is Canto 2, Chapter 1. So we'll end there and see if there's some discussion. You want to ask something? No? Okay. Your son looks like he's getting ready to. I have found that the children ask the really sharpest questions. So if any of our children want to ask anything, please do so.
What are the avatars of Vishnu, and how many are there?
How many avatars are there?
Yeah, and what are the avatars?
What are they? The names and how many? That's what you want to know? Well, do you have Srimad Bhagavatam in your home? Not yet. Maybe someday you will. And when you do, and even the digital version should be available online, and you can show her how to find it online. And Canto 1, Chapter 3 gives a list of avatars. But it's not a complete list, because the complete list is as many waves as there are in the ocean. And that's too many to count. But there's principal avatars. Not only, there's 6 different categories of avatars. You ready? Common, what many people know is the Leela Avatars. You've heard of this before? Das Avatar, 10 avatars. Those are Leela Avatars. Nrsimha, Vamana, Ramachandra, Matsya, Kurma, Buddha, Parshuram, Krishna Balaram. So those are Leela avatars. There's many, many, many more. That's just one of the categories, and there's 10 principal ones. And so without going through it, because you're asking for names, those are some names. But there's another category, and that's called empowered incarnations. Empowered incarnations is a jiva that's given the power of Vishnu to do something. The fullness of Vishnu's power. For example, one of the names you'll find in that list is Prithu, King Prithu. And Prithu is bearing the Lord's ruling potency. Palana Shakti. He's a jiva, but he's an avatar bearing the Lord's potency to rule. Or Narada. You know who Narada is, right? He's a Shaktivesh avatar bearing the Lord's potency of bhakti, his bhakti shakti. So he goes all over the place giving bhakti because he's empowered to do that. That's the second category. There's many others in that category. You're next. You have a question? No, okay. The Purusha avatars. Mahavishnu, we spoke about Mahavishnu. The Super Soul is another one of the Vishnu forms. Shiro Dakshay Vishnu, the Lord of the Heart. And Garbha Dakshay Vishnu, the Lord of each universe. Those 3 Vishnu forms, they're called Purusha avatars. So there's 3. The forms of Manu, that's Manvantar avatar, that's at number 4. Guna Avatar. Guna means modes of nature, goodness, passion, ignorance, and they're presiding deities of each of those modes. Those are Guna Avatars. So there's some names, but the number is too many to count. So principal ones are mentioned in Canto 1, Chapter 3, and you'll find a similar list in Canto 2, Chapter 7. So he'll show you how to find those places. You can go look and read And when you one day get a Bhagavatam set in your home, you can just read it in your hand, aside from off your smartphone. Okay?
Thank you.
Sure.
Maharaj, I was thinking about the pastime of Parikshit Maharaj. He accepted his mistake and let whatever it happens, he is ready with that.
Yes.
But in the devotee's life, we also see sometimes kind of allegations, blames, misunderstandings happens. So he, per se, for him or he did not do any mistake, but people are taking it other way around. So how to maintain the mind and
how to maintain the mind?
Right. What should we understand at the time somebody is blamed?
You're asking now the practical application in our personal lives when somebody blames us for something we didn't do, and how do we maintain stability when
Yes,
that happens?
Maharaj.
That's what you want to know. Well, there's things that people do. There's ways to manage negative emotions, and there's ways to transcend negative emotions. And both tools are helpful because transcend, we're not there yet. So we have to kind of do the manage thing. But we should know that the managed thing is always unsatisfactory and incomplete. But it's good to know how to manage. And twice in recently, well, there's recordings. I'll refer you and anybody else here to a seminar that I gave in Naperville on overcoming negative emotions. And if you want to know how to find that and share that with your people, Vangshidhari will help you get the link for those. It's a 4-part series. It's 8 hours of how to overcome negative emotions. And another place where that topic specifically was discussed is the Dhruva story. And it comes up 3 times in the Dhruva story. Something from Narada, something from his mother, something from Swayambhuva Manu, who is his father's father, his grandfather, Lord Brahma, the Swayambhuva Manu. So your question is discussed there in detail. I mean, the 8-hour seminar is more comprehensive, and it's much more in terms of practical things that one can do to handle negative emotions when they start to happen. One of the things, there's many things, rather than just repeat it now. Understand where they're coming from, detach yourself from the mind, and you watch the movie and you're just watching a movie. The movie isn't you, it's the mind. And then you're the observer of the mind, of the emotion and the dynamic. Good association is also helpful. There's many things that are helpful. And all of those things, when you're doing any of those things, or combination of those things that are helpful, stay fixed on the principle of smartavya satatam Vishnu, vishmartavya nujatachit. Always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna. That's where that train is going. If you really want to handle reversals where you stay balanced, you have to be on the Krishna train. Your mind goes to Krishna. And then there's stability. And then there's clarity. Doesn't mean it's not that there's never a negative emotion. It's you know just what to do in response to that negative emotion, and the thing that's prompting the negative emotion.
Yeah, but sometimes during the practice, always observer and the things which are observing by the observer.
Yeah.
Both together will exist.
Yeah.
So how can we overcome?
Well, knowledge and detachment. So you give him the microphone because There's people online that want to hear what your question is. They're probably in the back of the room too.
Okay, so sometimes, not sometimes, many times, observer and the things which are observing by the observer, both will exist inside your mind or soul
Yes.
forever. So
Well,
how can we get?
it's not forever. Excuse me.
Yeah.
You go finish your question.
Yeah, how can we get rid of both?
You need a very powerful cleansing agent. And the cleansing agent is bhakti. Bhakti has the power to diminish those impressions and to dissolve them. And not only dissolve the impressions, but dissolve the material mind. Whoa. Could you say that again? Yeah. Bhakti has the power to dissolve the subtle body of the conditioned soul. You'll find that in Canto 3, Chapter 25, where Kapila is explaining this to Devahuti. And it's also in Chapter 29. Bhakti has the power to dissolve the subtle body.
So expressing bhakti by words or expressing bhakti by feelings, which helps?
Everything. Totality. Body, mind, and words. Atma Nivedana. Total connection with the source of everything. It doesn't happen like snap your fingers. It's not a 1 to a 0 or 0 to a 1 or 10. It's gradual, but as bhakti unfolds, there's still emotion. There's still emotion, but you're not captured by it. It's a very interesting truth about bhakti. And the truth about bhakti rests upon the object of bhakti, Krishna. Krishna does things, and he's not attached to those things he does. We just discussed it in this Akrura's talks, chapter 38. He's speaking about, he's just like, Krishna, you're so wonderful. Let me sing your glories. So he starts in his mind, because he's not speaking to anyone.
Yeah,
He, by his ikshate, by his glance, he creates the universe, universes. And the universes cause and effect. But he, by his glance, is not at all attached to the glance or the byproduct of the glance. Although he's seeing it as it's unfolding, and he's the cause. By his expansion as Paramatma, he's the witness of everything. But he's not attached. So similarly, one who becomes attached to Krishna can observe all things using the very language you're using. You can still observe things. You don't become dull. But you're not attached. You can see transparently as Krishna sees things. And then you can make choices because your free will is operative like anything, and you can choose what's appropriate for each and every circumstance as it fluidly moves. That's a liberated soul's position. We're not there. But that's becoming attached to Krishna takes you there. That's the train that we're encouraged to get on. Get all aboard the Krishna train, pulling out of the station. And it takes you to that place where those turbulences that are parts of duality, the happiness and distress, the pleasure and the pain, the honor and the dishonor, chapter 2 Bhagavad Gita, one can be situated on the other side of it. Completely, not just handle it, but on the other side of it. And then still deal with, because sometimes the body gets pain or somebody says something harsh or something.
So ideally, right, though we will be in a state of observing anything without any detachments, but the feelings still have existency.
Yeah. There's spiritual feelings, is my reply. Mother Jasoda feels feelings. When She looks inside Mother, she hears that Krishna has eaten dirt. She has some feelings.
Yeah, but is there any way, even without observing the feelings, we can exist?
Well, there's a stage of neutrality, but that's not desired by devotees. Neutrality is negation of the unpleasant. Then you go into this neutrality space. But the transcendental beyond neutrality is becoming attached to Krishna, and then there's feelings in relation to Krishna. And that which comes from Krishna.
Yeah, but during the practice, right, in neutrality is making mind dumb, right?
No, I'm not sure what you're asking. We're not looking to become numb or neutral to unpleasant things. Neutral towards unpleasant things is a detachment. Neutral towards pleasant things is another detachment. But the goal of bhakti is to go beyond that neutrality position, where there's attachment to something. Because we're part and parcel of the Supreme Being. And in the Supreme Being, by nature, is Satchit Ananda. So we're also pleasure-seeking because we're part and parcel of the Supreme. So we want happiness, not just neutrality. So we have to be attached to something. So you try to become neutral, and you can stay there for a while, but if you're not attached to something, you'll go back to being attached to the temporary. So when there's attachment to the eternal, there's feelings. You're not numb or neutral. There's attachment. And in that attachment, there's feelings. I mean, that's, the cowherd boyfriends, or the gopis, or the elders, or the cows. Moo. They love Krishna, and Krishna loves them. But at the end of the day, they're attached to Krishna. Krishna is going to go back to Nandagram, and they have to go to the Goshal. Moo. They're attached to Krishna. And Krishna sometimes sneaks out and goes and milks them, although they've already been milked, but just seeing Krishna, they give more milk. I mean, there's attachment in transcendence. It's not just neutral. It's beyond the pleasant, unpleasant of the material world. It's in another world, the world of transcendence, where there is feeling. The goal is not to become numb or neutral. That's a temporary situation. It's not a permanent situation. You have to be attached to something. So be attached to transcendence. Be attached to Krishna, the person, loving service to Krishna. That's the goal. Then it's beyond this neutrality thing. Right now, we're not attached to Krishna. So we have to manage those negative emotions and not become overjoyed when some good fortune comes, because that's just inviting us to get more drawn into duality. Oh, good fortune. Here comes the misfortune. One after the next. That's the world of duality. So be neutral towards the world of duality. And in that disposition towards the material duality, develop attraction for Krishna. That's what this Bhagavatam will do. Read it, and it's magical. It'll happen. Things that you did not yet fully understand, just the light goes on, and it's that kind of literature. It's a sound vibration that's very powerful. Very powerful. Anyone else? Okay, she's got another question.
Like Krishna is in everyone's heart.
Yes.
So is he in also animals' hearts?
Oh yeah. He's in the plant's heart. He's in the bird's heart. He's in a microbe's heart. He's in the COVID-19 heart. He's wherever there's a living entity, he's side by side with that living entity. All different forms of life. Wherever there's life, Super Soul is there. Yeah. So therefore, we respect animals and red foxes and trees and.
Thank you.
Behind the where I'm staying, Vibhu Chaitanya's home, there's a pond. And at night, the ducks go somewhere because there's some kind of a coyote or some kind of a creature like that that goes hunting for the ducks. So they fly away. I don't know where they go. And then they come back in the morning when the sun comes up. So this morning, there's one duck. I've studied the ducks. So one duck has a green head, and I believe that's the male. And then there's a mama duck, and then there's the four little ducklings. They kind of like grew up. They're like little guys. But the papa duck didn't show up this morning. And I thought, oh no, maybe the coyote got him. And I was very sad. But he showed up. And I think, yay. So, having compassion for other living entities, even ducks. Or, so Radhapriya goes in the back and feeds them some prasadam once a day. They go, and she throws them some prasadam, and they wiggle their tail, and they're really happy. So we're kind to other living entities. So yes, the animals have super soul inside, as they have a soul and a super soul, wherever there's life. So we respect life. We'd like to have a friendly disposition. We don't put our head inside a tiger's mouth as an act of friendship. We regard the dangerous animals in a certain way, but we respect that there's soul and super soul within. We have different behaviors towards different living entities, but regard them as part of Krsna. Anyone else? Online?
Yes, Maharaj.
Okay.
First question here, Michael Grant. Hare Krishna Maharaj, according to my understanding, you said that we should be friendly towards bullies by considering them a soul, but if I am not wrong, we should be angry towards someone when blaspheme pure devotees of the Lord.
Yeah.
How can we relate these two things?
Well, but when there's a bully, pardon me, but I bristle when I see somebody bullying others. I see the soul and I see the behavior, and I don't like the behavior. I bristle when I see the behavior, and that bully needs to be dealt with appropriately, not by embracing them either. But so different behaviors need to be dealt with in appropriate ways. While you see the soul, you relate or you respond to the behavior in an appropriate way. So, and that is not at all inconsistent with this question. When someone is blasphemed, an exalted soul is blasphemed, you can see the blasphemer in a certain way. It's like, here's Sita. When Hanuman was visiting Sita in the Ashok Grove, he had witnessed firsthand how the Rakshasis were treating her. And he was like, just give me the word and I'll finish them all. And what did Sita say? She was compassionate. I mean, I don't know if you or I would be compassionate have we been tortured for 10 months by somebody. But she said their nature is such that they're ignorant, and they're doing the bidding of Ravana, who is certainly ignorant, and they should be forgiven. Wow. That's very exalted, elevated conduct. So, but Hanuman's response was right. Look how they've treated you. And what to speak of Ravan. So, are we ready for the next question?
Yes, Maharaj. This is from Raj Ojha. Question on practicing Ashtanga Yoga as mentioned in Canto 1 for improving bhakti by making body healthy and mind stable to help chant better and getting towards sattvic eating resulting in getting in mode of goodness. Do you recommend practicing Ashtanga Yoga and dedicating time? 1 second.
No. It's not in Canto 1 either. It's in Chapter 6, Bhagavad Gita. Now, Dhritarashtra seemed to know, kings of that time seemed to know, Dhritarashtra seemed to know, because that's how he immolated his body. He just entered into such a state of intense trance, his body just burst into flames, no matches needed. But there are devotees. You're asking me, do I recommend? I don't recommend. Prabhupada never did. Prabhupada didn't speak kindly about, depending on those things. But I do know devotees that do. I'm aware that you took a 1-month course along with your daughter to learn, to become a yoga instructor, and that's fine. And if you feel that it's helpful, okay. But a concern, it's not like the final, but a concern is relying upon those things so that you can chant better is missing the real point of bhakti. Bhakti is not just by, Ashtanga Yoga and its benefits. Chanting better is from bhakti. That's what our founder Acharya taught us. Next. Okay. One more. You're on a roll.
In the Ramayana, when Ravana took Sita to
Lanka.
Was Sita worried that she was not with Rama, or was she brave that Rama will get?
Oh, it's not just worried. More than worried. Her life is Rama, and she was separated from Rama, so she was like without life. It was horrific, not just worried. But she maintained her life for the pleasure of Rama, because she wanted that he come and redeem her, rescue her from that difficult situation. And he did. So, does that answer your question?
Yeah, but when was Rama worried when Sita was taken away from him?
Yeah, he was more than worried too. He was beside himself with grief. Now, there's an emotion, and it's not from our perspective, it's a really sad emotion. But the good news is, here's the good news. According to the teachings of our acharyas, that's a particular kind of bhava. There's 33 a list of 33 different bhavas. Vyabhachari bhava is the technical term. And when it becomes a sustained emotion for some period of time, it takes another name, sanchari bhava. So it's an ecstasy. So the ecstasy is, so there's the primary emotion. This is a science of rasa. A primary emotion becomes amplified by separation. And then again meeting, anticipating meeting a loved one is another ecstasy. And then when there's a meeting, then it's another kind of ecstasy. And that's the way of relationships. Supposing, I explained this to our devotees in China the other day. There was one of those Zoom classes, you can see all the people who were on the call. These certain, the whole screen was filled with names. So I know this person has a friendship with that person. So I said, supposing this person over here says to that person over there, I used their names, Jambavati says, I'd like to come and visit you for a month. But when I visit you for a month, you have to be with me 24/7. You have to stop your work and stop all, taking care of your mother and all the other things that you do and, giving classes. Just be with me morning till night for a month. No break. So what's the person she wants to visit going to say? Well, excuse me, but there have to be some separation along with the meeting. It's just part of any relationship. Even a really fine relationship, and that's just a friend and a friend. But whatever the relationship may be, because that's one of the primary rasas is friendship, there is separation as well as meeting. And so that's one of the ecstasies that Sita was feeling, intense separation, and Ram was feeling intense separation, which is an ecstasy. It doesn't change the primary relationship, it just heightens it during that period of separation and then again meeting. And how wonderful it was. Meeting after some period of separation. So supposing anyway, you haven't seen a friend in a long time, and then there's the opportunity to see that friend you haven't seen in a long time. And you share what you've been through and they've been through, and you have a really nice time together. But it's heightened by that period of separation. Any relationship has both. And variety of other things too. And that's the science of rasa. Anything? Okay. Follow up? Okay.
Rama knows the future, so he should know that he's gonna kill Ravana and get Sita. So why was he worried so much about Sita when he knows that he would kill Ravana and take her home?
Well, that's a nice question. So with I'm going to use the personality of Godhead. There's this feature and there's that feature. This feature is his opulence. He's all-knowing, he's all-powerful, he's perfect, etc., etc. There's his divinity. And then over here, there's his relationships, and that we'll call that sweetness. So there's opulence, Aishvarya, and sweetness, Madhurya. So there are both things happening, and sometimes the sweetness seems to overwhelm, like an eclipse. It seems to cover the omniscience. He's always omniscient. But for his increased sweetness of pleasure, of happiness, sometimes it looks like he forgets himself. Sometimes he forgets himself, the divinity part, the opulence part, the all-knowing part. It's always there, but it seems to be not taking prominence because the other is taking prominence.
So at that time he was in Maya?
Huh?
He was in Maya?
It was yoga Maya, spiritual. All potencies are under the control of the source of all potencies. And so yoga Maya is one of those internal potencies. Maha Maya is an external potency. Maha Maya covers us into forgetfulness and ignorance. And yoga Maya allows one, for example, It allowed Arjuna to behave with Krishna the way he behaved with Krishna when he would sit with him and walk with him, and just like friends. Although he knew he was God, and then when he saw the universal form, it was, oh no, I've offended you. Please forgive me. But that's the opulence part. But later, Krishna's driving his chariot, Parthasarathi. So then it's the sweetness part. So within the makeup of Bhagavan, God, there are these different general categories and then subcategories of those general categories. There's all of his opulence, and then there's all of his sweetness. And in Vrindavan, Krishna manifests the maximum fullness of his sweetness. And a little less so in Dwarka, a little less so in Ayodhya, and not so much sweetness as in Vaikuntha. So there's all variety in the spiritual world. It's one of the questions that came up during the midday class today. Where do you go when you leave? Supposing you're a nice devotee, where do you go? Well, it depends on the mood. The mood of love determines where you'll go. Supposing you love money, you won't go to the spiritual world, you go to some material place. Anyway, consciousness carries you to your next destination, even in this lifetime and after this lifetime. I'm over answering your question, but I thank you for your nice questions.
So consciousness can recognize whether the soul is on Mahamaya under the cover of Mahamaya.
Can we get microphone? The soul, everything is dependent upon our regard for Krishna. Yeyatam mam, this Bhagavad Gita. Yeyatam mam prapadyante. Prapadyante means surrender. As they have a relationship with me, I reciprocate. So, if one who's covered by yoga, Mahamaya, wants to forget Krishna. One that's covered by Yogamaya wants to remember Krishna. But you remember Krishna in a way that there can be an intimacy, like Mother Jasoda, the same example as before. She looks inside Krishna's mouth. She sees the whole cosmic manifestation inside Krishna's mouth. And she's processing, in different verses following that, what she saw. But overwhelming is her maternal affection. So she just forgets what she saw. And she wants to treat her son with the love of a mother towards her son. The sweetness overwhelms the opulence in Vrindavan. He shows his opulence. He lives Govardhan Hill. He does many things. But the sweetness overwhelms that. It's a very interesting place. So, depending upon your consciousness, that's where you're going to go. It makes sense. And the Lord knows what our consciousness is because He's in the heart. As a super soul. Okay, I think we're going to end. If that's okay. Thank you very much. Prabhupada ki Jai.